I call Gordon Anthony Ainsworth, my lord.
Gordon Anthony Ainsworth.
Philip Ainsworth, aged 13, is accused of murdering Tommy Vincent, a 12-year-old schoolfellow. The defence has called Philip's father, Gordon Ainsworth.
What is your religion?
The Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by mighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. Ainsworth, you are the father of the accused, Philip Ainsworth.
That is correct.
And how long is it since you've seen your son?
Oh, well, that would be about 4 years now. Yes, I last saw Philip about 6 months after the divorce, just before I emigrated to Canada.
Where you have since remarried, I believe.
Yes.
Mr. Ainsworth, can you tell us, please, if the period of your divorce was a particularly bad time for Philip?
Well, it was always bad for Philip, you know. I mean, right from the start. My ex-wife and I, we didn't hit it off at all. It was ridiculous. We'd never married. Philip got the backwash from both of us. Martha didn't really care for the boy, and as for me, well, I see now I just took it out on him.
You took it out on him?
Yes.
In what way?
Look, what I meant was I was pretty desperately unhappy. When you're in that sort of state, you're inclined to look around for a scapegoat. I chose Philip. That's not to say I was especially tough of the mind, except on one occasion maybe, but I was cold, distant, I guess. I just wanted him to keep his proper place and cause no trouble.
But did Philip, in fact, cause trouble? I mean, was he a difficult child?
He'd act behind your back, you know, meddling with things.
Meddling?
Yes, machines, principally. He had a passion for machines.
Now, you told us that you were particularly strict with him on one occasion. Can you tell us about that, please, Mr. Ainsworth?
Yes. I'd begun to have just about enough of Philip's messing around with things. I tried scolding him and whacking him even, but it didn't seem to do any good. Then it happened I bought a new car. It was for business mainly. I was a sales rep at the time. It was a Saturday, I remember. I just finished cleaning the car and was back inside the house when I heard this odd clanging sound. I went out again, and there was Philip with a spanner in his hand, hitting out of the car.
Hitting out?
Yes, he'd got this spanner from the toolkit, apparently, and tried to loosen a couple of nuts. And when they wouldn't turn, it seems he just began to hit the car over and over. All along the offside, the panels were damaged, pitted.
So what did you do, Mr. Ainsworth? I
almost lost my mind. I'd never seen such wanton destruction. I grabbed Philip, thrashed him. Harder than I've ever done in my life before. Harder than I like to think about now. He screamed. And as it happened, that's just about the last contact we ever had.
The last contact. Now, what does that mean, Mr. Ainsworth?
Well, it frightened me, you see, the whole thing. What Philip had done and how I'd reacted. So that, as it were, brought my other problems to a head. I saw that the time had come for me to make other arrangements with my life.
Leave your wife and son, you mean?
Well, what else was I to do? I mean, everything came back to the bad situation between Martha and me. Together it seemed we were destroying each other and having a good bash at wrecking Philip too. With only one of us, well, he might stand some kind of chance.
But after the incident with the car, you knew you didn't want that one to be you.
What?
Now, please, Mr. Ainsworth, you've been admirably frank up till now.
All right, so I left the whole mess for Martha to clean up if she could. I was supplying the money. That seemed to me enough just then. But you've got to remember how frightened I was, genuinely. I didn't understand things anymore, and I certainly didn't want to end up killing anybody.
Or by having anybody kill anybody else, presumably. Now, Mr. Ainsworth, from the time you left home until the finalization of your divorce, did you make a practice of seeing Philip frequently?
No, hardly ever. I kept away, in fact. It seemed best.
So, therefore, your last act as his father was to punish him severely, more severely than ever before, in fact, for his violence with a machine. Mr. Ainsworth?
Yes. Yes, I guess so.
Thank you, Mr. Ainsworth.
Mr. Ainsworth, during the period you were living with your ex-wife and Philip, did you try and instill into him a clear sense of right and wrong?
You mean teach him how to behave himself?
Yes.
Yeah, well, certainly I tried to bring him up right, yes.
And did Philip at any time give you the impression that he did not possess a clear sense of right and wrong?
But he couldn't seem to stop meddling with those things around the house, no matter how I told him off.
Yet did he demonstrate to you in any way that he didn't know that these were wrong things to do?
No.
Nor that he was not acting wrongly in damaging your car?
Oh, no, that time I'm certain he knew he was doing evil. The moment he saw me, he was terrified, tried to run for it. I'm sorry now about what happened, but he brought it on himself. No doubt of it.
No further questions?
You may stand down, Mr. Ainsworth.
You are Dr. Mark de Quincey, consultant child psychiatrist at St. Winifred's Hospital for Children, Fulchester.
I am.
Do you know the accused, and have you had occasion to examine him?
Yes, about a year ago, his mother brought him to see me as a child who was becoming unmanageable at home. I had only 3 sessions with him.
Is it your meaning that you would have liked to have more sessions, Doctor?
I would indeed, but his mother grew impatient and brought the treatment to an end.
Why exactly would you have liked more sessions, Dr. de Quincey?
Well, I found him in psychiatric terms gravely disturbed, but there was nothing I could do.
Before we go any further, Doctor, would you tell me, please, when you encounter a patient who you consider to be gravely disturbed, is there any means of compelling psychiatric treatment?
No. Psychiatry is based on the free approach of the disturbed subject to the doctor.
Now, did you in this case warn Mrs. Ainsworth of what might happen if the treatment was discontinued?
I told her that the responsibility was out of my hands if the treatment was stopped.
I see. Now, Dr. de Quincey, you've told us that a year or so ago you saw Philip Ainsworth and you considered him to be gravely disturbed. Now, have you seen him recently?
Yes. During the period of his custody, I was permitted to see him twice. It was quite sufficient to convince me that nothing had changed.
But in court today, we've been told by another psychiatrist, Dr. Chisholm, that Philip Ainsworth is in fact not disturbed at all. He is in fact acting, illustrating something called the Ganser syndrome, by which a normal subject may impersonate a hysteric.
No, you can only invoke something like the Ganser syndrome when every other explanation has failed. In physical medicine, it is only after you have demonstrated that the limb is not broken or internally bruised or whatever that you can permit yourself to think that the subject may be shamming.
Well, are you saying then that Dr. Chisholm's observation of Philip's condition wasn't strictly comprehensive, Doctor?
Psychosis is the result of conflict within the person. Very well. But this usually takes the form of delusions which are recognizable as belonging to that person. Delusions of race, if it is a black man, say, delusions of disease, if it's someone who fears illness. Now, Dr. Chisholm observes Philip and cannot single out any one of these things. So he concludes that the psychosis must therefore be a fabrication.
But you consider this to be an unjustified conclusion.
Well, the fact is that psychotic delusions can quite as easily mirror the anxieties of the society the subject lives in as his own private fears. In the Dark Ages, people were unsophisticated and terrified of invisible powers. As a consequence, psychotics at that time were possessed of devils. It was a very common syndrome.
Well, are you telling us, Dr. de Quincey, that something similar in 20th century terms has happened to Philip Ainsworth?
Machines have transformed the life of man. They have conferred great benefits, but they have also complicated our lives extraordinarily. They have confused men by doing so many things so much better. So subconsciously we fear them.
Is this merely a personal view of yours, Doctor, or is it held by others in your branch of medicine?
Oh, I can quote authorities, certainly.
You see, I'm wondering why, if it exists, this syndrome should be visited in what would appear to be otherwise a perfectly ordinary boy.
Philip is hardly a perfectly ordinary boy from an emotional point of view. Due to his family background, he lives in an emotional vacuum. He has encouragement for his delusions, of course. Always in trouble all his life for tampering with machines. Then his father beats him savagely for breaking a motor car. That proves to him, if proof were needed, that machines are more important than people, better than them.
And it was as a result of all this, you'd say, that he made his invention of the Rexels.
It's a question of identification. Unwanted and isolated, Philip had to belong somewhere. Well, he saw he could become a machine, functioning without painful thought, unable to suffer. That is the real meaning of the word Rexels. It's Philip's way of saying to the world, I have ceased to be human. I accept the world's evaluation of the machine above the person.
But does this explain why, on June the 4th last, he tied up a young schoolfellow and caused his death by suffocation?
I think I can help the court with that. But it means I should have to ask for a deviation from what I understand to be the normal procedure to do so.
And what's that, Bray?
I would like to place the accused under hypnosis and ask him certain questions.
Good Lord, I object to this. May I ask the witness where exactly he thinks he is?
My lord, Dr. De Quincey is convinced that there is vital evidence still to be gained from the accused. But this evidence is suppressed information and can only be elicited by hypnosis.
Is the doctor aware of the nature of this evidence?
Well, only in a very general way at the moment, my lord. He was not permitted to continue with hypnosis before. But it would appear to be that June the 4th was a very critical date in the life of Philip Ainsworth.
Mr. Lloyd?
My lords, my expert witness, Dr. Chisholm, suggests that there is a possibility that suppressed information may be gained under hypnosis and that Dr. De Quincey should be allowed to proceed.
Well, members of the jury, it's right that the defence should have every opportunity to present the evidence they wish. I therefore intend to permit the defence's expert witness to carry out further examination of the accused under hypnosis.
All right, Philip. You're looking very well and comfortable. Now just relax. I want you to look at these funny old spectacles. All right? You are going to sleep for a while. I'm going to ask you some questions which you will answer honestly. Then when I say wake up, you will wake up again. All right? Now go to sleep. You feel at peace. Your eyes are tired, sleepy, relaxed. Sleep.
Yes, he's under.
Philip, I want you to cast your mind back to June the 4th. Can you do that? June the 4th.
June the 4th. Saturday.
That's right. I want you to tell me what you did that day, everything you recall.
In the morning, went shopping for my mother. High Street.
The High Street. Go on.
Just going into shop when car came round corner. Yes, going fast. Other car pulling out from curb, then...
What happened?
Accident. People hurt. People running. The man bleeding badly. Couldn't breathe. Others hurt too. Blood. Ambulance. Only one's all right.
Yes?
The car's all right. Smashed a bit, but not choking, not bleeding.
And there was nobody you could tell how you really felt? Not your mother? Nobody close enough who could understand?
The Rexer-in-Chief knows. All those who laugh at the Rexers are wrong. The boy, Thomas Vincent, is wrong. Today, order for the day, destruct. The Rexer-in-Chief knows what to do. The Rexer-in-Chief understands. The Rexer-in-Chief gives the order for the day, destruct.
I see, Dr. De Quincey. All this was revealed under hypnosis.
Yes, my lord.
And in your view, this has a bearing on the accused's mental state at the time of the killing.
I believe it shows that he was not in a state to be responsible for his actions.
Mr. Lloyd?
Dr. De Quincey, let's just get one or two things straight. Now, the prosecution has at no time denied emotional deprivation of one sort or another in the accused Philip Ainsworth. Nor does it now wish to deny a degree of fantasy in him. But what it does deny is that this deprivation, this fantasy, was strong enough to rob him of all moral sense and hence of responsibility for his actions.
Then I can only say I disagree.
Well, disagree all you wish, Doctor. But the cold fact is, a boy is dead. And we're here to settle whether it was murder or some kind of psychological accident.
It was not murder. You cannot call it that.
You wouldn't deny, would you, that the accused expressed intent to kill to his companion Jane Langton, to his diary, even at the very moment of committing the act?
The intent was clearly psychosomatic. Philip Ainsworth, as I've tried to show, was obsessed with machines.
And machines, of course, have no moral sense.
No.
Nor can they in any way be held responsible for their actions.
No.
But Philip has frankly admitted to this court, Doctor, that he invented the Rexors. Now, did he veer between two personalities? Is that the way you'd put it?
No. The machine personality would have been constant, even if sublimated a good deal of the time.
That sounds really most convenient, Doctor, but there seems to be no explanation for the fact that Philip's teacher at school, his mother, his father, and Dr. Chisholm all insist that Philip shows every sign of knowing right from wrong.
Philip saw his body as a mere series of functions. Now, that would include functions of thought and conduct judgment up to a point. Why not? All machines have a programming to obey.
Except, of course, when machines develop murderous hatreds for their schoolfellows and do them mortal injury.
That is no way to look at it.
Isn't it? Do you still persist in your view that it's impossible that a cunning little criminal has deceived you?
There's what you've just heard in the hypnosis session. There's no possibility of deceit there.
But you see, that proves nothing beyond the fact that the accused has certain emotional problems. Dr. Chisholm is convinced that Philip Ainsworth was consciously trying to deceive him.
Dr. Chisholm is in error. Dr. Chisholm is behind the times. For enlightened psychiatrists, grave emotional disturbances preclude what you mean by responsible behavior. The kind of doctor who thinks otherwise is the kind of doctor who, not so very many years ago, would have flogged lunatics to cure them.
Thank you, Dr. De Quincey.
You may stand down, Dr. De Quincey.
That completes the case for the defence, my lord.
Mr. Lloyd.
Members of the jury, the facts of this case are not disputed. Philip Ainsworth certainly caused the death of Tommy Vincent by tying him up and suffocating him with a plastic bag. The only two questions are, 1, did he know what he was doing at the time? And 2, did he know what he was doing was wrong? Now, first, we've heard Philip Ainsworth say that he didn't go into the hall. It was the Rexor-in-Chief. But we've also heard that Rexors are machines who don't speak. Yet Philip Ainsworth clearly spoke to Jane Langton. He said, "What if I do kill him? What does it matter about things like that?" And when Jane tried herself to remove the bag, Ainsworth thrust her aside, clearly demonstrating he wished Tommy Vincent to suffer. I put it to you that it is plain he did know what he was doing. Now, as to whether he knew what he was doing was wrong, Philip's mother, his father, and his schoolteacher have all told us that he knows right from wrong. And remember, after the crime, he ran away and hid in a wood. Now, why did Ainsworth do that? Unless he knew what he'd done was wrong. We've heard how later he attempted to deceive Dr. Chisholm, but more important than Philip Ainsworth being a cheat is that he's a killer. Tommy Vincent is dead. Now, it's up to you whether Ainsworth has the opportunity, possibly, to kill again. And whatever personal sympathy you may have for him, you must find him guilty.
Miss Tate.
Members of the jury, Philip Ainsworth is a disturbed child. You must remember this at all times. Unwanted by his mother, deserted by his father, he lives in what has been described as an emotional vacuum. He is also a psychotic and suffers from the strangest of delusions that he is a machine and that machines are taking over the world. Quite plainly, therefore, he could not have understood what he was doing on June the 4th, nor appreciated the natural and probable consequences of his acts. He had just had the experience of an accident which struck at the very heart of his disturbance. He became the Rexor-in-Chief. He wrote in his diary as the Rexor-in-Chief. And then he met Tommy Vincent, a boy who laughed at him, laughed at the very idea of machines taking over the world, and this was all too much for him at this critical time. Members of the jury, on June the 4th, Philip Ainsworth was in the same blind, unthinking condition as that of a runaway train. He spoke like a human, perhaps looked like a human, but he was a machine, and in the same way he did not know that what he was doing was wrong. Now, if you find Philip Ainsworth guilty of murder, ladies and gentlemen, then you are saying that for the lightest possible reasons, mere schoolboyish mockery, a highly intelligent boy cold-bloodedly murdered a schoolfellow. In my submission, the proper verdict is clear, members of the jury. It is a verdict of not guilty.
Now, members of the jury, the defence have not disputed that the accused, Philip Ainsworth, tied up a younger boy, Tommy Vincent, placed a plastic bag over his head, and that as a result Tommy Vincent died. Now, there are 3 points on which you must be satisfied beyond all reasonable doubt before you can find the accused guilty. Now, firstly, you must be sure that he was really conscious, aware, and mentally in control at the time. Did he know what he was doing, or was he, because of some strange delusions or fantasies, like a sleepwalker, uncontrolled? Secondly, you must be sure that if he was aware of what he was doing, he foresaw that death or serious harm would result. And thirdly, you must be sure that if he knew what he was doing and foresaw what would happen, he knew that what he was doing was wrong. But if you feel that although he had some awareness of right and wrong, it was probable that he was suffering from such abnormality of mind as substantially to impair his responsibility for the acts which led to Tommy Vincent's death, then your verdict will be one of manslaughter. You will now retire and consider your verdict.
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the accused, Philip Ainsworth, guilty or not guilty of murder?
Not guilty.
Do you find the accused, Philip Ainsworth, guilty or not guilty of manslaughter?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of you all?
Yes.
Mr. Justice Bragg ordered that Philip Ainsworth should be detained for life at the special unit of Fulchester Approved School. Next week, a chance to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.